Hey, what's up? Hello everyone, welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
My name is Dyl. Today we are going to be breaking down the Oppenheimer trailer, but before we do that, drop your initial thoughts down below. We would love to hear what you think of this trailer.
I'm not sure how to feel, so I think I'm going to kind of discover my feelings on this movie as we chat about it. So, Dylan, what were your initial first reactions to this trailer?
So I won't lie, if you are new here or if you've been here for a while, you know that Oppenheimer is one of my most anticipated movies of the year. Christopher Nolan, war movie, and a lot of the actors that I beloved. And I mean, this trailer just sucked me in even more. I really like the score that's presented by Ludwig Göransson. It's very gripping. He's one of my favorite composers, and I'm just glad to see him getting more work. Cillian Murphy, I think, looks great in the leading role. I would say one nitpick he would be with the trailer is both of, I guess, the comedy moments don't really work for me, but everything else I think really delivers on what I would want from this film.
Christopher Nolan was actually the reason I first got into movies. When I was like 11 years old, I saw Inception. I was like, oh my god, I am not as hot on Christopher Nolan now as I once was. I still love his movies. I used to think he was like the be-all end-all of cinema, and I definitely don't think that anymore. I think he makes some great films. I think he makes a few less than great films, which I don't think I would have admitted like 10 years ago. But at this point, I'm surprised that I'm not like through the roof excited for a new Christopher Nolan movie. I'm kind of just like, yeah, it looks good. I will go see this day one. And but yeah, this trailer doesn't make me go like, oh my god, this is best of the year material. It just looks like a good drama. I am a little bit worried about some things. I'm not sure if I love how this is presenting the nuclear bomb as a necessity. Maybe the whole point of the movie is that through the first like hour and a half of it, everyone's like, we have to do this, we have to do this, and then they do it and they're like, but did we have to do that? That seems like it was not a good thing in the end. I am a little bit worried that this will either be hit by like First Man type stuff where it's not patriotic enough so people like turn on it, or it is overly patriotic and paints the creation of the atom bomb as a necessity to defeat the Nazis, which it was not. I don't know. I'm worried. I think that there is a tightrope to walk here.
I see it as Oppenheimer and Murphy's portrayal of him kind of looks like the whole time he's like, should we do this? This doesn't seem like it's going to go over well. And then we see in those black and white scenes, which I would assume would be after the bomb, they're very much like, no, this wasn't the right thing to do. But also that's completely speculation because no one has seen this movie. But what we are going to do here today is we're going to go over what this film's Oscar prospects could be, because some people could be predicting this for across-the-board nominations. Others could be predicting a major flop. So I think we just start off at the top. Best Picture, Best Director. Matt, where do you stand right now?
I don't really think these are going to make it in by the end of the year. Christopher Nolan, even when he's gotten Picture in the past with Inception and Dunkirk, he missed Director for Inception. Honestly, I think that this is just not going to be a top 5 contender by the end of the year. Even if it makes Picture, it's going to be a bottom half contender. So I'm going to say I don't think that this gets in for Director. Although I think Picture is a possibility. I am not saying Director.
At the moment, I do have this as a top 5 contender in Best Picture. I think that this is Universal's main push. It's going to have a strong backing. I think it's going to do well at the box office. It's going to have a lot behind it, on top of, I would assume, pretty high critical and audience reception. Director, I can definitely see him being that surprise miss, like akin to Denis Villeneuve back in 2021, just the big quote-quote blockbuster the director doesn't really get in.
It's all going to depend on two things: box office and critical support. Does this get the critical backing that Dunkirk did, that Inception did? I'm not sure if it's going to get that type of backing to get into Best Picture. But that said, this does have something that Dunkirk didn't have, that Inception didn't have, that Interstellar didn't have. It is a biopic. And at the center of a biopic, there's always a performance, a hopefully very good performance, but the Oscars love those biopic performances, and we've got Cillian Murphy playing Robert J. Oppenheimer right here. He's going to be in apparently every single scene of the movie, which makes me feel like he could have enough of a presence. Even if the film doesn't make it into Picture, he could have enough of a presence to make it in here.
I feel like he's pretty safe to be in the conversation, and if you're in the conversation as a biopic performance, you're kind of already in there for a nomination. So Right now, I feel pretty good for him getting nominated, but not in the winning conversation.
The fumble that I would actually expect is in the screenplay category, which it's never been Christopher Nolan's strong suit, is his scripts. Christopher Nolan's concepts are always excellent. The way that he structures stories is fantastic. The way that he comes up with how things connect throughout, how he uses time. But the weak part is his characters and his dialogue. So that's why I'm a little bit hesitant on Cillian Murphy, even if he's in every single scene. And with the supporting cast, it also makes me worried. We have such a huge cast here. Everyone in Hollywood is in this movie. But does that mean that anyone has a substantial enough role to break through? Maybe Emily Blunt. She's the only one that seems like she has enough of a presence. Matt Damon, I don't think would get in, even if he is in the entire movie.
I would say Matt Damon's performance in this movie will help him over in Air more. Like, hey, he has 2 great performances. Let's nominate him for his better performance. Blunt is a possibility. We've talked about how not deep supporting actress is, where it's very top heavy, so maybe she can come in, but also I'm not really seeing that at the moment. But over in the writing department, I think what could help Nolan here is the fact that this is based on a book, so it's not him having to create everything from scratch. He can pull stuff from pre-existing media that can maybe help him with making the characters more relatable, or making sure the characters just don't exposition dump whenever they come in.
But what I am feeling strong about here is the cinematography. Hoyt van Hoytema's work looks magnificent on this film. As always, he is one of the best working cinematographers, has proven to be so over and over and over again.
He's one of my favorite current working cinematographers. I would have loved to see him get in last year for Nope, so maybe, some people will also feel like that, so that will carry over to Goodwill this year with the voting branch to get him in here for Oppenheimer. I think regardless of how you feel this movie will perform above the line, these technical nominations seem very good, unless this movie is like complete critically panned. But I feel like cinematography and some of these other technical nominations are pretty safe.
Also looking great is the editing and sound here. I don't know if you can say that the sound looks great when it's sound. We can't see the sound, but it seems like there's a lot of potential for a lot of great sound work. Hopefully, as long as Christopher Nolan doesn't be a big dummy head and make it impossible to hear people speak.
I understand those arguments. I also am a defender of his sound mixing because I think it very much adds to the weight and the emotions of whatever scene that you're in. It very much engrosses you, but I feel like since this is not an action-heavy movie, some of those sound issues shouldn't occur, maybe other than whenever the bomb is going off. But still, the bomb going off is probably a very small portion of this entire runtime. I think both of these categories are where Oppenheimer could see its wins on Oscar night, including our next category.
About score, it sounds luscious, it sounds gorgeous from what we're getting in this trailer. Ludwig Göransson back at it again.
Like I said earlier, I'm a huge fan of him. I think this sounds great so far. I think his best work actually comes in a Nolan movie back with Tenet, which we know how that fared in award season. I can listen to the Tenet score, how like people talk about how they listen to the Babylon score. You just put it on, you can listen to it all in full. It's great, and I think it very much elevates the movie in it as well. I know your issues with its mixing, but I think the score is still very good. And I could see an angle for if this movie is a top contender, for this being a chance to win in the score. I mean, score is one of those hard categories to predict because you only get to hear what's in the trailer, and that's only one song. Sometimes it is the most popular song, but it's not always the case, specifically going back to like Dune last year.
The vibe that I get here is just like, it sounds very, very good, but maybe we've heard stuff like this before. But let's move on to the production and costume design. This is a period piece that is always a hit with the Academy. Does this look strong in these categories?
I would say production, yes. Costumes, no. But if this is a major player, it could like Irishman its way into costumes because men in suits. But at the moment, I'm not going to predict that.
This looks like First Man to me, and First Man did get production design. But that said, I think that there's so many other movies this year that have very, very strong production design that this just might get left on the cutting room floor for that. But it does give me the same kind of vibes that First Man did. That moves me to the last category we're going to talk about here, visual effects. And I had this like top 5 all year round, and I'm starting to think it's going to miss. The reason being, I just keep thinking, is there going to be enough visual effects? Like, how many bombs are we going to see go off? Is that going to be enough? Like, just seeing fire, is that going to be enough? It seems like just doing an explosion is very simple. Also, the fact that Christopher Nolan does so much practical rather than using CGI, I'm starting to think it doesn't get VFX.
I just think you have to look at two things here. You look at like Top Gun last year, you look at 1917, you look at other Nolan movies that still eventually get in. I know Dunkirk did not get in, but other Nolan movies and other very low visual effects movies. And then you also look at what is really in competition this year. Because I mean, we have Dune, we have a Marvel movie, we have Indiana Jones, and then you kind of struggle to see stuff that looks very well. Like, I mean, there's Little Mermaid, there's Napoleon, there's Dungeons and Dragons, and that's about it. So Oppenheimer at least seems like it's going to be a more well-received movie than those other three, so that could be just a goodwill. Here's an extra nomination, get in here.
This brings me into, obviously, I'm a little bit lower. Not a little bit, I'm a lot of bit lower on this film than you are. What is the worst-case scenario for this film? How could this fail? What do we think could lead to this missing on these big Oscar categories?
I think regardless of anything else, if this bombs at the box office, I think that might be the nail in the coffin for this movie. And then there's what we mentioned before, the anti-war or pro-war outrage, depending on which angle it goes for, where I don't think that would really matter for voters, but it would matter for public perception.
I keep referencing First Man as a benchmark for this, and I think that the how could this fail scenario for Oppenheimer is exactly the same as what we saw with First Man, and how that movie went from being the #1 contender of the year to not getting nominated. This is a pattern now with Damien Chazelle, with Babylon and First Man being the #1 contender, it's totally safe, and then flopping and just vanishing from the Oscars. And the way that went down is it starts off with criticism of the movie's attitude towards America from a lot of right-wing papers, a lot of right-wing people. There's a bit of a boycott on Twitter. People saying, oh, it's not patriotic enough. Oh, it didn't show the American flag, whatever. And then, because of that, the movie ends up losing a chunk of its box office, which was always kind of relying on those, oh, America, fuck yeah, people coming out to see the movie. So you lose that, then the box office kind of doesn't go anywhere off of the critical acclaim. Ultimately, the movie's just forgotten about within like 2 weeks, and it stumbles into Oscar season with no one thinking about it. That is the scenario that Oppenheimer has to worry about.
So, at least looking at Nolan's last two Best Picture nominees, Inception, Dunkirk, they both got 8 nominations. So that brings us here to Oppenheimer, where, you know, on paper, it makes sense to go with 8, and I see 10 categories where it could show up. You got picture, director, actor, screenplay, sound, editing, cinematography, production design, score, visual effects, and that's probably where I land. I'm not really sure which ones I want to take out. I'm kind of leaning screenplay.
I'm so much lower than you. You've got 10. I have 4. I have sound, editing, cinematography, score. We're gonna see how that turns out. If the movie comes out, I really hope to be wrong on this. I just have a bit of a negative gut feeling on this film.
Well, if you've made it this far into the video, please consider dropping a like. I mean, you had to like if you made it, what is this, like 20 minutes in? Drop your comments down below of your predicted Oppenheimer haul. Do you think it's in picture? Do you think Murphy's in? Or do you think this is going to underperform like Matt does? But until next time, my name is Dyl.
And my name is Matt. Please don't be mad at me. Thank you for watching Fantasy Filmball.